My twin took my place on a date, so I went with her boyfriend and sparks flew. That's the simplest way to summarize the most complicated month of my life, but nothing about identical twins and betrayal is ever truly simple. I should have known something was off that morning. Rachel was acting strange, asking detailed questions about my date with Ethan. Where were we going? What was I planning to wear? Was I doing my hair up or down? I chalked it up to her usual curiosity about my love life, maybe even a touch of jealousy since she'd been single for months. Rachel had always been the bolder twin, the one who took risks while I played it safe, but I never imagined she'd cross this line. The first hint came when I couldn't find my favorite black dress, the one I'd laid out specifically for tonight. My heart skipped with irritation as I tore through my closet. Had Rachel borrowed it without asking again? I stormed into the bathroom to confront her, but she'd already left. Running late, I settled for the navy blue dress instead, mentally preparing to scold her later. I took extra time with my makeup, wanting to look perfect for Ethan. We'd been dating for 3 months, and things were getting serious. The butterflies still hadn't subsided whenever I thought about him. His warm smile, the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, how he always seemed to understand me better than anyone except Rachel. The irony of that thought would hit me later. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Can't wait to see you tonight. You're going to love this place." My fingers hovered over the screen, a smile spreading across my face as warmth bloomed in my chest. He was thoughtful like that, always planning special evenings. Tonight was our 3-month anniversary, not a huge milestone, but Ethan insisted on celebrating it anyway. I typed back a quick response and checked the time. 2 hours until he'd pick me up. That's when I received the call that would unravel everything. "Hey, it's Casey from work. I thought you were supposed to be here today. Johnson's asking about the Henderson presentation." My blood ran cold. "What?" "No, I requested today off weeks ago. Rachel's covering my shift." The pause on the other end stretched too long. "Rachel's here right now. She told me you changed your mind about taking the day off." My mind spun, trying to make sense of this information. Rachel was at work? Then who? The realization hit me like a physical blow. The missing dress. The excessive questions. Her unusual interest in my date with Ethan. "Casey, put my sister on the phone. Now." Another pause. "She just stepped into a meeting. Is everything okay?" Everything was most definitely not okay. My hands trembled as I hung up. I dialed Rachel's cell immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. Then I called Ethan, but he didn't answer either. A violent nausea swept through me. Was it possible? Would my own identical twin sister actually pretend to be me on my date? The thought was so absurd I almost laughed. But the evidence was mounting, and the sickening feeling in my stomach told me I was right. I paced my apartment, mind racing through possibilities, each more painful than the last. Had she planned this for a while? Did she have feelings for Ethan? Was this just another of her impulsive decisions, thinking it would be funny to pretend to be me for an evening? The clock ticked past the time Ethan was supposed to pick me up. I sat on the edge of my bed, still hoping for a call, an explanation, anything that would make this nightmare disappear. But my phone remained silent, a mocking reminder of my twin's betrayal. When Rachel finally returned at midnight, I was waiting in the dark living room. She startled as I switched on the lamp. For a fraction of a second, guilt flashed across her face, my face but not quite, before she composed herself. "Where have you been?" My voice came out steadier than I expected, considering the hurricane raging inside me. "Work ran late," she said, avoiding my eyes as she set down her purse. My purse, the one that matched the black dress she was wearing. My dress. Funny, because Casey called looking for me. Said you were covering my shift. I watched her face carefully, searching for cracks in her facade. "How was your date with Ethan?" Her eyes widened slightly. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're wearing my dress, Rachel. The one I was going to wear tonight." "For my date? With my boyfriend." Each word felt like swallowing glass. "Did you think he wouldn't notice you weren't me?" She sank onto the couch, dropping the pretense. He didn't. Not at first, anyway. The confirmation sent a wave of pain through my chest so intense I had to remind myself to breathe. My own sister had impersonated me, had sat across from Ethan pretending to be me. Had she held his hand? Had she kissed him? Why? The question came out as a whisper. "Why would you do this to me?" Rachel stared at her hands, my hands, but with different nail polish. "I've liked him since you introduced us. I just wanted to know what it would feel like just once to be on a date with him." "And how did it feel?" The words tasted bitter in my mouth. "It was nice until he figured it out." She had the decency to look ashamed. We were halfway through dinner when he realized I wasn't you. Little things gave me away. I didn't know inside jokes, ordered food you'd never eat. A small, vindictive satisfaction bloomed amidst my pain. At least Ethan knew me well enough to tell the difference. But it quickly withered under the weight of betrayal. He was furious, Rachel continued, her voice small. He left me at the restaurant. I had to take an Uber home. I should have felt triumphant at Ethan's loyalty, but all I felt was hollow. My sister, my twin, my other half had betrayed me in the most personal way possible. And Ethan, what was he thinking now? Was he disgusted? Confused? Did he think I had something to do with this twisted scheme? Get out, I whispered, surprised by the ice in my voice. Pack your things and get out of my apartment. Please, now. The shout tore from my throat, raw and primal. I can't even look at you right now. Rachel fled to her room, and I remained frozen on the couch, my mind replaying the evening that should have been mine over and over. As I listened to her packing down the hall, my shock gradually hardened into something darker. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was calculated, premeditated. She had stolen not just my date, but a piece of my identity. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. We need to talk. Tomorrow? I didn't respond. I couldn't think about Ethan right now, couldn't process what had happened to us when I was still trying to understand what had happened between my sister and me. The twin bond, that supposedly unbreakable connection, had shattered tonight, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. As I listened to Rachel drag her suitcase to the door, a dangerous thought formed in my mind. If she wanted to play identity games, perhaps it was time I showed her exactly how it felt. And maybe, just maybe, her boyfriend Jason would be the perfect way to do it. The plan wasn't fully formed yet, just a dark seed taking root. But as the front door closed behind my sister, I felt a cold clarity replace my pain. For 26 years, Rachel and I had shared everything. A face, a birthday, a childhood. Now we would share something else. The experience of watching someone you love walk away with your mirror image. I fell into a fitful sleep that night, dreaming of doubles and shadows and a revenge that would make my sister understand precisely what she had done to me. Morning brought no relief from the betrayal. If anything, the sunlight streaming through my blinds only illuminated the full extent of Rachel's deception. Each breath felt like inhaling shards of glass, each thought of her with Ethan a fresh wound. I called in sick to work, unable to face people, unable to respond to the 3 missed calls from Ethan. My finger hovered over his name in my contacts several times, but what would I say? How could I explain something I still couldn't comprehend myself? Instead, I opened Instagram and navigated to Jason's profile. Rachel had been dating him for about 6 months. Casually, she claimed, but I'd seen the way she lit up when he texted. He worked in finance, played basketball on weekends, and had a smile that dimpled his left cheek. I'd met him a handful of times at group gatherings, enough to exchange pleasantries but not enough to truly know him. I scrolled through his photos considering. One showed him and Rachel at a rooftop bar, his arms slung casually around her shoulders. Another featured him at a basketball court, sweaty and grinning after a game. I paused on a recent post, Jason alone at some charity gala, caption mentioning Rachel was supposed to attend but canceled last minute. I clicked on his stories. The most recent, posted 2 hours ago, showed his office view with the caption, "Another day, another dollar. Drinks at Murphy's tonight to forget this presentation." Murphy's. I knew that bar. Rachel and I had gone there a few times. It was close to Jason's office, the kind of place where after-work crowds gathered to unwind. A plan began to form, equal parts exhilarating and terrifying. What if I showed up there tonight? What if I let Jason think I was Rachel? But could I pull it off? Rachel and I might be identical, but our personalities, mannerisms, and styles were different enough that people who knew us well could tell us apart. Ethan had eventually seen through Rachel's deception. Would Jason see through mine? Perhaps that was the point, to let him discover the deception, to make Rachel feel the same shock and betrayal I had felt. But another part of me, a darker part I barely recognized, wondered what it would be like to actually succeed where my sister had failed. I spent the day in a strange state of detached calculation. I studied photos of Rachel, practicing her wider smile in the mirror, the way she tossed her hair over her left shoulder instead of her right, how she gestured more expressively when she spoke. I dug through the clothes she'd left behind, selecting an outfit I knew she would wear, high-waisted jeans, a cropped green sweater that brought out our hazel eyes, ankle boots with a slight heel. Ethan called twice more. Both times, I watched his name flash on my screen until the ringing stopped. I wasn't ready to face him, not when this new, vengeful version of myself was taking shape. I needed to see this through first. At 7 o'clock, I stood outside Murphy's, heart pounding so violently I was sure everyone could see it through my Rachel's sweater. The confidence that had propelled me here began to waver. Was I really going to do this? Impersonate my own sister to get back at her? Yes, I was. I pushed through the door, scanning the crowded bar until I spotted him at a high-top table with a few coworkers. Jason. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark curly hair, and that dimple just beginning to appear as he laughed at something his friend said. My stomach twisted with nerves as I approached, the magnitude of what I was doing suddenly overwhelming. But then I remembered Rachel in my dress, sitting across from Ethan, and my resolve hardened. I slid into the empty seat beside Jason, my heart thundering as I leaned in and pressed a kiss to his cheek. "Surprise," I said, injecting Rachel's characteristic breeziness into my voice. His eyes widened with genuine pleasure. "Rach, I thought you were busy tonight." His arm immediately wrapped around my waist, pulling me closer. Plans changed. I shrugged, trying to mimic my sister's casual confidence. "Thought I'd rescue you from another boring work night?" Jason introduced me to his colleagues as my girlfriend Rachel, and I felt a twisted satisfaction hearing those words. For tonight at least, I was Rachel Miller. Bold, spontaneous, the kind of woman who stole her sister's date and didn't think twice about it. The evening progressed in a surreal haze. I ordered Rachel's usual drink, vodka soda with lime, not my preferred gin and tonic, laughed a bit louder than I normally would, and touched Jason's arm frequently the way I'd seen Rachel do. I was hyper-aware of every detail that could give me away. A nervous habit, a reference I wouldn't understand, a memory I shouldn't have. But Jason suspected nothing. He looked at me with such easy affection, his hand resting comfortably on my knee under the table, that I began to understand how Rachel must have felt with Ethan. There was a heady power in this deception, a thrill in being someone else for a night. When his co-workers left and we were alone, Jason's eyes softened as he tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "You look different tonight." "Good different." My pulse quickened. "Different how?" "I don't know. More present. Usually your mind's going a million miles an hour." He traced my cheekbone with his thumb. "I like seeing you relaxed like this." Guilt prickled at the edges of my consciousness. Jason wasn't the villain in this story. He was just another victim, like me, like Ethan, but I pushed the feeling away. This wasn't about hurting Jason. It was about making Rachel understand what she'd done. "Want to get out of here?" His voice dropped lower. Intimate. This was the moment, the fork in the road. I could reveal myself now, explain the twisted revenge plot, and walk away with my conscience somewhat intact. Or I could continue this charade, take it further, cross a line that couldn't be uncrossed. "Let's go to your place," I heard myself say, Rachel's voice coming from my mouth. Jason's apartment was exactly what I expected. Modern, minimalist, with the occasional personal touch that suggested Rachel had influenced his decorating. Photos on the fridge included several of them together, her smile slightly wider than mine, her pose more confident. I turned away, focusing instead on the view from his 12th floor window. "Wine?" he asked, already pulling a bottle from a rack in the kitchen. "Please." As he poured, I wandered his living room, taking in the details of my sister's relationship displayed in books they'd apparently shared, a women's sweater draped over a chair, a pair of earrings on the coffee table that I recognized as hers. My phone vibrated in my pocket, my actual phone, not Rachel's. I checked it discreetly. Another call from Ethan. I silenced it, guilt and determination wrestling in my chest. Jason returned with 2 glasses, handing one to me before settling on the couch. I sat beside him, close but not touching, suddenly uncertain of my next move. "So what really made you change your mind about tonight?" he asked, studying me over the rim of his glass. "This morning you said you needed space to think about things." I froze, unprepared for this revelation. Rachel had asked for space? Were they having problems? I realized I didn't need space. I improvised. "I needed perspective." His eyebrows rose slightly. "And your perspective has changed since this morning. Let's just say I've had a reality check about what matters." It wasn't entirely a lie. The past 24 hours had certainly shifted my understanding of many things. Jason nodded slowly, seeming satisfied with my answer. He reached for my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. The gesture was intimate, tender in a way that made my breath catch. This was wrong. This was all wrong. I was crossing a line that shouldn't be crossed, not even for revenge. But then he leaned forward, closing the distance between us, and I didn't pull away. His lips met mine, gentle at first, then with growing intensity. I told myself I would stop this any second, that I just needed to know how far Rachel had gone with Ethan. But as Jason's hands tangled in my hair, I found myself responding with unexpected fervor. There was something liberating about being someone else, about shedding the careful, responsible persona I'd cultivated my entire life. As Rachel, I could be impulsive, passionate, unrestrained. The guilt was still there, hovering at the edges, but it was drowned out by something else, a spark, bright and dangerous, igniting between Jason and me. When we broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "What's gotten into you tonight?" he murmured, his voice husky. The question pierced through my Rachel persona. What had gotten into me? How had I let this go so far? The revenge that had seemed so justified now felt hollow, petty in the face of the real connection I was experiencing with Jason. "I should go," I said abruptly, standing up. This was a mistake. Confusion clouded his features. "Rach, what?" "I'm not Rachel!" The words burst out before I could stop them. "I'm Emily, her twin." I watched the confusion transform into disbelief, then horrified understanding. Jason stood too, putting distance between us. "What the hell? Is this some kind of sick joke?" "She did it first," I said, the justification sounding childish even to my own ears. "She pretended to be me on my date with Ethan yesterday. I wanted her to know how it felt." "So you used me to teach her a lesson?" His voice was ice. "You made me an unwitting part of your twisted twin drama." Shame washed over me, hot and suffocating. "I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was hurt and angry and thought it was okay to kiss me under false pretenses." The disgust in his expression was unbearable. "How is that any better than what Rachel did?" "It wasn't better. It was exactly the same, maybe worse because I'd done it deliberately, with full awareness of how much it would hurt. In seeking revenge, I had become the very thing I despised." "You need to leave," Jason said, walking to the door and holding it open. "And tell Rachel, the real Rachel, that we're done. I'm not getting in the middle of whatever toxic dynamic you two have going on." I walked out without another word, the weight of what I'd done growing heavier with each step. Outside his building, I finally answered Ethan's call. "Emily?" His voice was a mixture of relief and wariness. "Where have you been?" "I've been trying to reach you all day. Can you come get me?" Tears spilled down my cheeks, hot and shameful. "I did something terrible, Ethan. Something unforgivable." He didn't hesitate. "Text me your location." "I'll be right there." Waiting on the curb, I realized with crushing clarity that my revenge had accomplished nothing except to make me as guilty as Rachel. I had betrayed not just Jason and my sister, but myself, the person I thought I was, the values I claimed to hold. When Ethan's car pulled up 20 minutes later, I barely had the courage to meet his eyes. He didn't ask questions, just opened the passenger door and waited for me to get in. We drove in silence for several blocks before he spoke. "Your sister called me today. She told me it was all her idea, that you had no idea what she was planning." I nodded, throat too tight for words. "I believe her," he continued. "But I need to hear from you what happened tonight." So I told him everything, the dark impulse for revenge, the calculated deception, the unexpected spark with Jason, the shameful revelation. Ethan listened without interruption, his knuckles whitening on the steering wheel as my story unfolded. When I finished, he pulled into an empty parking lot and turned off the engine. "So you kissed him?" It wasn't a question. "Yes. To get back at Rachel." That's what I told myself. But I struggled to articulate the confusing tangle of emotions. But it wasn't just that. There was something real there, a connection I wasn't expecting. Ethan absorbed this, his face unreadable in the dim light. "Are you in love with him?" "No." The denial was immediate, instinctive. "I barely know him. It was just, I don't know what it was. Rebellion? Freedom from being the good twin for once? Or maybe just chemistry I wasn't prepared for." He nodded slowly. "And you're telling me all this because I don't want to be like Rachel," I whispered. "I don't want secrets and lies between us. Because you deserve to know who you're with, the real me, even the ugly parts." Ethan was quiet for so long I feared he was done with me, that this confession had sealed the end of our relationship. But then he reached for my hand, his touch gentle but firm. "What Rachel did was wrong," he said carefully. "And what you did tonight was wrong too. But there's a difference. You're sitting here owning it, choosing honesty even when it hurts." Relief weakened my limbs. "So you don't hate me?" I'm not thrilled, he admitted with a wry twist of his lips. But no, I don't hate you. I think we all do stupid things when we're hurt badly enough. I leaned my head against his shoulder, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming me. What happens now? Now, we go home. We sleep. And tomorrow you need to talk to your sister. The thought of facing Rachel after everything that had happened made my stomach clench. What would I even say to her? The truth, Ethan said simply. The same truth you just told me. That's the only way forward for either of you. He was right, of course. The cycle of betrayal and revenge had to stop somewhere. And despite everything Rachel had done, despite my own terrible choices tonight, one truth remained. She was my twin. My other half, the person who had shared my world from the very beginning. Ethan drove me home, kissing me softly before I got out of the car. Call me tomorrow after you talk to her, he said. It wasn't quite forgiveness, but it was a path toward it. I stood in the empty apartment that Rachel and I had shared for years, surrounded by the evidence of our intertwined lives, photos of us through the years, clothes we'd borrowed and never returned, inside jokes scribbled on the refrigerator whiteboard. The anger that had driven me to Jason's apartment had burned itself out, leaving behind a hollow ache and the question that had haunted me since childhood. Where did Rachel end and I begin? I texted her, "We need to talk. Come home tomorrow." Her response came almost immediately. "Okay. I'm sorry, Em. For everything." I set my phone down and curled up on the couch, too drained to make it to my bedroom. As I drifted toward uneasy sleep, one thought circled in my mind. The sparks that had flown between Jason and me weren't just about revenge or rebellion. There had been something real there, something unexpected. And in the wreckage of these twin betrayals, I wondered if there might be something worth salvaging after all. Morning arrived with the harsh clarity that often follows a night of bad decisions. I lay on the couch, tracing the patterns of sunlight on the ceiling, mentally rehearsing what I would say to Rachel. Every scenario I imagined ended in tears or shouting or both. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Thinking of you today. You can do this." His faith in me was both comforting and daunting. Could I really have this conversation without it descending into blame and recrimination? Could Rachel and I find our way back from the damage we'd inflicted on each other? The sound of keys in the lock sent my heart racing. I sat up, smoothing my rumpled clothes, suddenly wishing I'd at least brushed my hair or teeth before this confrontation. Rachel entered cautiously, as if expecting to be ambushed. She looked terrible, eyes red-rimmed, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing the kind of oversized sweatshirt she only wore when truly miserable. For a disorienting moment, it was like looking in a mirror at my own distress. We stared at each other across the living room, twin sets of identical eyes assessing, measuring the damage. "Hi," she finally said, voice small. "Hi." My own voice didn't sound much stronger. She hovered by the door, apparently unsure if she was welcome to sit. I gestured to the armchair across from me, and she sank into it, dropping her overnight bag on the floor. "Jason broke up with me," she said after a painful silence. "He said to ask you why." I flinched. This wasn't how I wanted to start the conversation, but perhaps it was fitting. Consequences before explanations. "I went to see him last night," I admitted. I pretended to be you. I watched comprehension dawn on her face, followed by hurt, then outrage. "You what? Why would you—" She stopped abruptly, the anger draining away as quickly as it had flared. "Oh, because I did it first. Because you did it first," I echoed, the childish justification hanging in the air between us. Rachel pressed her palms against her eyes. "Did you sleep with him?" "No!" The question shocked me, though I realized it was fair. "God, no. But we kissed. And I told him the truth afterward." She dropped her hands, staring at me. "You told him you weren't me?" I nodded. He was disgusted. Said he was done being part of our toxic twin dynamic. Can't really blame him. A bitter laugh escaped her. "So we've both destroyed each other's relationships. Congratulations to us. Actually," I said slowly, "Ethan and I talked last night. We're working through it." Something flashed across Rachel's face. Envy? Regret? He's a good guy. Better than I deserved after what I did. "Why did you do it, Rach?" The question that had been burning inside me since that terrible night finally emerged. "Honestly, why?" She twisted her hands in her lap, a nervous gesture we both shared. "I've been attracted to Ethan since you introduced us. I tried to ignore it, tried to be happy for you, but it just got stronger. And then Jason and I were fighting, and I was jealous of what you and Ethan had, and I don't know. I thought maybe if I could be you for one night, I'd get it out of my system. And did you? A tear slipped down her cheek. No. It just made it worse. Especially when he figured out I wasn't you. The way he looked at me, like I was a monster. And he was right. I absorbed this, surprised by the lack of fresh anger. Maybe I'd exhausted my capacity for rage, or maybe my own actions had made it impossible to judge hers. So what happened with you and Jason before all this? We were fighting about commitment, she sighed. He wanted more. Moving in together, talking about the future. I kept putting him off. I think part of me was holding back because of these feelings for Ethan. And now? Now I've lost them both. She wiped her tears with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. Jason won't return my calls, and Ethan was never mine to lose in the first place. I should have felt vindicated by her pain. Isn't that what revenge was supposed to accomplish? But sitting across from my mirror image, watching her struggle with the same regret and confusion I felt, brought no satisfaction, only a bone-deep exhaustion with the whole situation. I kissed Jason, I said suddenly. And it wasn't just about revenge. There was something there. A connection. Rachel's eyes widened. You felt something for him? I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. It surprised me too. I went there planning to get back at you, but when it happened, it felt real. Electric. I forced myself to look at her. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you because we need to stop the secrets between us. She was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this revelation. So what happens now? You pursue Jason? We keep taking turns stealing each other's boyfriends? No, of course not. What happened with Jason was wrong, regardless of how it felt. I wouldn't do that to you. I hesitated. But I think we need to figure out why we did these things to each other. Why we were so willing to cross lines we never should have approached. Rachel pulled her knees to her chest, making herself smaller in the large chair. Do you think it's because we're twins? This need to, I don't know, steal each other's lives sometimes? The question hit surprisingly close to fears I'd harbored since childhood. Maybe. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe we both just want what the other has because it seems better than our own reality. The grass is always greener on your twin's side, she said with a wan smile. Despite everything, I found myself smiling back. Something like that. We lapsed into silence again, but it felt different now. Less hostile, more contemplative. The air between us had changed, the sharp edges of betrayal beginning to soften into something more complex. I am sorry, Em, Rachel finally said, her voice breaking. So incredibly sorry. What I did was unforgivable. I did the same thing, I reminded her. What does that make me? Human, she suggested. Flawed. Hurt. She paused. My sister, still, I hope. The simple plea in those words cracked something in my chest. For all our lives, Rachel had been the confident one, the twin who took risks and made demands. Seeing her uncertain, afraid of losing our connection, reminded me of the little girl who'd once held my hand on the first day of kindergarten, whispering, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." "Always your sister," I said softly. "That doesn't change even when everything else does." Relief softened her features. So where do we go from here? It was the question I'd been asking myself all night. I don't know exactly, but I think it starts with space. Real space, not pretending to be each other? She nodded slowly. You want me to move out? I think we need to develop identities that aren't so entangled. The realization had come to me during the night as I'd analyzed how we'd arrived at this mess. We've spent our whole lives being the twins. Maybe it's time we figured out who Emily and Rachel are as individuals. That's terrifying, Rachel admitted, but you're probably right. She glanced around the apartment we'd shared since college. I can start looking for a new place this week. No rush, I assured her. This is still your home too, but I think it would be good for both of us. Rachel wiped away fresh tears. Can I ask one thing? Of course. What are you going to do about Jason? Honestly? The question caught me off guard. Nothing. He wants nothing to do with either of us, remember? She studied me with that penetrating twin gaze that had always seen through my defenses. But if he did? If there was a chance for something between you two? My instinct was to deny any possibility, to reassure her that I would never pursue her ex-boyfriend. But I'd promised honesty. I don't know, I admitted. It would feel wrong on so many levels. But I can't pretend I didn't feel something. Rachel nodded, a sadness in her eyes that looked ancient. If it ever becomes something, I'd want to know. Not to stop you, just to not be blindsided. It won't become anything, I said firmly. But yes, I promise. No more secrets. She extended her hand across the coffee table, pinky finger outstretched in the childish promise gesture we'd used since we were 5. No more secrets. No more stealing each other's lives. No more pretending to be each other. I linked my pinky with hers, completing the ritual. Deal. That afternoon, I met Ethan at a cafe halfway between our apartments. He looked tired but smiled when he saw me, rising to pull me into a hug that lingered just long enough to ease some of my anxiety. "How did it go with Rachel?" he asked once we were seated with our coffees. "Better than I expected. Worse than I hoped." I traced the rim of my mug. "We didn't solve everything, but we talked. Really talked. She's going to move out." Ethan's eyebrows rose. "That's a big step. A necessary one, I think. We need to figure out who we are separately." I took a deep breath. I told her about what happened with Jason. How did she take it? Surprisingly well. Hurt, but understanding in a way. I met his eyes directly. "I need to tell you something, and it's going to be hard to hear." Wariness crossed his features, but he nodded for me to continue. "When I kissed Jason, I felt something. A connection, a spark, whatever you want to call it." The words felt like betrayal even as I spoke them. "I'm not saying I have feelings for him or that I want to pursue anything. I don't, but I need you to know that it wasn't just about revenge." Ethan was quiet for a long moment, his expression carefully neutral. "I appreciate your honesty," he finally said. "It hurts to hear, but I'd rather know the truth." "Where does that leave us?" I asked, heart pounding. He reached across the table to take my hand. "That depends. Do you want to be with me, Emily? Not because it's comfortable or because you feel guilty, but because it's what you truly want." The question deserved careful consideration. After everything that had happened, after the betrayals and revelations, what did I want? "I want to be with you," I said slowly. "But I think I need some time too. To sort myself out, to figure out who I am without Rachel always there as my reflection." Ethan nodded. "I can understand that." He squeezed my hand. "Take the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." The relief I felt at his understanding was tempered by a lingering uncertainty. Was I making the right choice? Was the spark with Jason just a momentary reaction to stress and rebellion? Or was it a sign that my relationship with Ethan wasn't as solid as I'd believed? As if reading my thoughts, Ethan said, "It's okay to be confused, Em. After what you've been through, it would be strange if you weren't questioning everything." I smiled gratefully. How did I get lucky enough to find someone so understanding? "I'm not being entirely selfless," he admitted. "I want you to be sure about us. I don't want to be anyone's default choice." The weeks that followed were a period of strange, painful growth. Rachel found an apartment across town and moved out with minimal drama. Our goodbye was tearful but not bitter. A see you later rather than a farewell. We promised to meet for lunch weekly, to maintain our connection while building our separate lives. Ethan and I decided on a similar approach. Not a breakup, but space. We would see each other once a week, no pressure, while I sorted through my confused feelings and he determined if he could truly forgive my betrayal. And Jason? He remained a complicated shadow at the edges of my life. I hadn't contacted him since that night, respecting his desire to be left alone. But thoughts of him surfaced occasionally, when I passed Murphy's bar, when I wore the green sweater I'd borrowed from Rachel, when I caught myself touching my lips and remembering the unexpected chemistry between us. It was during the 3rd week of this new arrangement that my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "It's Jason. Can we talk?" My heart performed a complicated gymnastics routine in my chest. I showed the message to Rachel during our Wednesday lunch. "Are you going to respond?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "I don't know. Should I?" She stirred her soup thoughtfully. "Maybe this is a chance for closure. For all of us. Are you sure you'd be okay with that?" I studied her face, looking for signs of the old pain. "No," she admitted with a small laugh, "but I think it might be necessary anyway." So I replied to Jason, and we arranged to meet at a coffee shop, neutral territory, public, safe from temptation or misunderstanding. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups. He'd remembered how I took my coffee. Not Rachel's preference, but mine. The realization sent an unexpected warmth through me. "Thank you for meeting me," he said as I sat down. "Thank you for reaching out," I replied, wrapping my hands around the warm cup. "I wasn't sure I'd ever hear from you again." Jason studied me with those intense dark eyes. "I needed time to process everything. To get past the anger? I understand. I'm truly sorry for what I did." He nodded. "I know. That's part of why I wanted to talk to you. Your apology that night, it was real. Immediate. You owned what you did." He paused. Rachel took longer to get there. The implied comparison made me uncomfortable. We both made terrible choices. I'm not better than her. Maybe not better, he conceded, but different. That's what I've been thinking about these past weeks. How different you two actually are despite looking identical. I shifted in my seat. Jason, why did you want to see me? He took a deep breath. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about that kiss. And I wanted to know if it was real or just part of your revenge plan. The directness of the question caught me off guard. It started as revenge, I admitted. But it became something else. Something I wasn't expecting. I felt it too, he said quietly. And it's been driving me crazy, because how twisted is it to feel a connection with my ex-girlfriend's identical twin? I laughed despite myself. About as twisted as feeling something for my twin's ex-boyfriend. Our eyes met across the table, and that same spark flickered between us. Inappropriate, complicated, but undeniably present. So what do we do with that? He asked. Nothing, I said firmly. It's too messy, too hurtful to Rachel. And I'm still figuring things out with Ethan. Disappointment flashed across his face, but he nodded. I respect that. I just needed to know if I was crazy for feeling what I felt. You're not crazy, I assured him. But timing is everything, and this is possibly the worst timing imaginable. We finished our coffees talking about safer topics. His work, my recent decision to take a photography class, the surprising freedom we'd both found in our newly single states. When we parted, his hand lingered on mine just a moment too long. In another life, Emily Miller, he said softly, one where we met differently. In another life, I agreed, ignoring the wistful ache in my chest. I told both Ethan and Rachel about the meeting, holding nothing back. Rachel appreciated the honesty, though I could see it hurt her. Ethan was quieter, more contemplative. What are you thinking? I asked him after I'd recounted the conversation. I'm thinking that you're doing everything right, he said. Being honest, respecting boundaries, giving yourself time to process. But, he smiled sadly, but I'm also thinking that when someone makes your heart race just by being in the same room, it means something. And pretending it doesn't rarely works in the long run. His insight startled me. Are you giving me permission to explore things with Jason? No, Ethan shook his head. I'm acknowledging reality. You felt something with him that you don't feel with me. Maybe it's just novelty or forbidden fruit, but maybe it's not. He took my hand. I love you, Emily, but I want someone who feels that spark with me. Tears blurred my vision. I do love you, Ethan. I know you do. But maybe not in the way both of us deserve. We ended things that night, not in anger or bitterness, but with a mutual recognition that what had started between us had been irreparably altered by recent events. It hurt, but beneath the pain was an unmistakable sense of rightness, of necessary change. A month passed. Rachel and I settled into our new rhythm, seeing each other regularly but living separate lives. The distance had begun to heal what proximity had damaged. I focused on myself. The photography class, a promotion at work, redecorating my apartment to reflect just my taste rather than a compromise between two personalities. I didn't contact Jason, and he respected my unspoken boundaries. But I thought of him sometimes, wondered what might have been in that other life he'd mentioned. It was Rachel who eventually brought him up again, over drinks at a new rooftop bar we were trying. Have you spoken to Jason recently? She asked, her tone casual but her eyes watchful. No, I said, surprised. I've been giving him space. Giving all of us space. She nodded, swirling her martini. I ran into him last week. We talked for a while. It was good. Healing. I'm glad, I said sincerely. He asked about you. My heart stuttered. What did he say? He wanted to know if you were seeing anyone. She watched me carefully. I told him you weren't? Rachel, listen to me, Em. She set down her glass. What happened between us was horrible. The way we betrayed each other, the trust we broke, we'll be working through that for a long time. But I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting what the other has. I waited, unsure where she was going with this. I think the solution isn't to deny ourselves what we want, she continued. It's to be honest about it, to stop the secrecy and deception. She took a deep breath. Jason and I weren't right for each other. I was holding back because of misplaced feelings for Ethan, who was clearly right for you. Ethan and I broke up. I reminded her. Yes, but not because you didn't care for each other. Because something unexpected happened that forced you to question everything. She reached across the table to take my hand. I'm giving you my blessing, Em. If there's something real between you and Jason, you should explore it. Openly. Honestly. I stared at her, searching for signs of hidden pain or martyrdom. Are you sure? Really sure? I'm getting there, she said with a small smile. It's still weird and a little painful, but I want us both to be happy more than I want to hold on to something that wasn't working anyway. That night I texted Jason, "Coffee again sometime?" His response came within minutes. Name the time and place. We met at the same cafe, but this time the air between us was charged with possibility rather than regret. He looked good, more relaxed than I remembered, his smile coming easier. "Rachel told me she gave you her blessing," he said after we'd exchanged greetings. I nodded. "Did that surprise you?" "A little." "A lot, actually," he laughed. "But it also felt like, I don't know, like the universe finally allowing something to happen that maybe should have happened all along." "That's a very optimistic interpretation of our twisted situation," I teased. His eyes crinkled. "I prefer to see it as a very complicated meet-cute. One we'll tell our grandkids someday, heavily edited for content." The casual reference to a shared future made my cheeks warm. "Aren't you getting ahead of yourself?" "Maybe," he conceded. "But I've had a lot of time to think about what I felt that night. And every scenario I play out ends with me wanting to see where this goes with you, complications and all." I studied him across the table, this man who had been part of the most painful chapter of my life, but might also be the beginning of something new. "I'd like that too," I admitted. "To see where this goes. Slowly, carefully." "I can do slow and careful," he agreed, reaching for my hand. When his fingers intertwined with mine, I felt it again, that unmistakable spark, bright and surprising. But this time, there was no guilt or shame to dim its glow, just the curious wonder of something unexpected taking root. My twin took my place on a date, and sparks flew in all the wrong places, between her and my boyfriend, between me and hers, between the fracturing halves of our shared identity. But from those dangerous sparks came an unexpected fire, the burning away of old patterns, the forging of new boundaries, and the illumination of a path neither of us could have found otherwise. Rachel and I were still twins, still connected in ways no one else could understand. But we were also finally becoming our true separate selves. And in that separation, I discovered something I hadn't expected, that sometimes the most authentic connections form in the aftermath of our greatest mistakes.